2025 marks a big milestone for the Mario franchise, as it's currently the 40th anniversary of the original Super Mario Bros. And while I do have some plans on those games later on this year, I felt very nostalgic and want to replay some of the games that I grew up with. And out of all the Nintendo consoles out there, the one I played the earliest was probably the Nintendo DS. As this console was freaking everywhere because my cousins had it, my friends had it. But then one day when it was my 5th birthday, my mom and dad head straight into Best Buy with me in the car. And then afterwards, I ended up getting a Nintendo DS as well as 4 games, which I think were New Super Mario Bros., Mario Kart DS, Super Mario 64 DS, and Sonic Rush. Now, out of the games in this list, my first ever game was probably Super Mario 64, but the other one was easily New Super Mario Bros. As this game was definitely my most played game on the Nintendo DS back in the day. And honestly, out of all the Mario games I could get introduced with, I feel like these ones were definitely the best. Because I got a good grasp on the 2D games, 3D games, and even the spin-offs. But for this video, I'm going to be specifically focusing on New Super Mario Bros. Now, at the time before this game released, 2D Mario kinda took a bit of a hiatus once 3D came along. As for the N64 and GameCube, the only mainline Mario games we got were Super Mario 64 and Sunshine, which were 3D platformers. And the last 2D platformer was Super Mario Land 2 in 1992. Now, despite everything going in full 3D, there was still a 2D market at the time with the handheld scene. Especially with the GBA, although for Mario's case, the only platformers we got were basically remakes of classic games. With the closest thing I guess for our original game were probably the new levels in Mario Bros. 3, but nothing truly original. And so, jumping all the way up to 2006, we have New Super Mario Bros. A game that was fairly well received, although I feel like with online reception this game is a lot more mixed. Mostly because of the bad stigma the New Super Mario Bros. Games gets when you mention its name. But luckily out of all the games, this is the one that gets the least flack about it. Because out of all the games in the series, this is the one that definitely has like the most creative power out of them all. Not to say those games were bad per se, I still really do enjoy them, but there's just something very special about the original DS version. But why would I be saying this about a 19-year-old DS game? Holy sh**. I guarantee you, next year we'll probably get existential crisis about this game. But with everything out of the way, let's get started. Alrighty, so booting up the game, we have the usual title screen. Nothing too crazy here, it's just a simple pan shot with grassy fields with Peach's castle in the background. Although if you do wait, you get an extended version of the opening cutscene. And I do love this bit where when the title screen comes down, it's all broken and crooked, and when Mario goes near it, he interacts with it to fix it up. But anyway, so the story begins in the peaceful Mushroom Kingdom, with Mario and Peach going on a nice walk when suddenly the castle is being attacked by this giant cloud. And then moments after Mario tries to investigate, Bowser Jr. sneaks behind Peach and then kidnaps her. Now go. Is there really anything I should say about this? It's a Mario story, what'd you expect? The only noteworthy thing here is that Bowser Jr. is basically the main antagonist of this game, as he's the one that you're basically been seeing for most of this game. Which I honestly don't mind, I really do like Bowser Jr. and how much of a little shit he is. But anyway, so jumping all the way to gameplay. So New Super Mario Bros. Is a fairly simple Mario platformer, as most of the moves Mario could do during the NES and SNES days are here and accounted. So you can run, jump, carry Koopa shells, all that stuff. But now it has much more of a modern spin. Well, at least at the time it was a modern spin. As even though Mario retains most of his 2D moveset, they also integrated some of his 3D moveset as well. Such as the ground pound, the triple jump, and even the wall jump. Which I've gotta say is probably one of the handiest moves in this game for me, as it saved my life multiple times in this game. Plus, it doesn't really feel too much a crutch because some of the secrets requires you to use the wall jump. And as for the actual feel of the controls, it honestly feels very good. Mario does feel a bit floaty, but I feel like the level design in this game really complements it, which is honestly a key thing that's very important when it comes to certain platformers. Because not only you need good control, but you also need very complementary level design. And I feel like New Super Mario Bros. Really nails this, as levels here has a really good progression curve, with each of the areas feeling unique from one another. And even though that this was kind of the start with the traditional Mario biomes like grass, desert, snow, and such, I feel like this game really utilized those level tropes very well. Like World 1 is your fairly basic grass course, but it does give you some variety of types of courses you'll be seeing in this game, like underground, sky, and underwater. Plus, with some of these biomes, they don't really have to be locked into certain things, like World 2 it's mostly the desert, but in one of the levels, you're actually traveling through the sewers, where here is a bit more maze and puzzle-like. And also, even though these don't really feel new by today's standards, this game also introduced brand new biomes as well. As in World 4, you're traveling through a dense forest area with the main obstacles being this poison water. You even get to ride Dory in this world, which makes this game automatically a 10 out of 10. And as for the other one, we have the mountain biome. And I also really like these areas because I love how very dense the level design in this game is, as you're constantly climbing up and down these mountains while hanging on to the edges. It's all pretty fun stuff, which is something I could just describe the level design in this game, as most levels here are very well made and have a very good pace to them. And even if you find playing through this game casually is a bit easy, I feel like the real challenge for new Super Mario Bros. Is easy with the star coins. And honestly, the star coin mechanic in this game is easily one of the best things Nintendo has ever put in a Mario game, as these are basically the main collectibles you'll be seeing throughout the levels. Think of like the Kong letters from Donkey Kong Country. And actually trying to find these is probably the most fun thing in New Super Mario Bros. Because these things are so devilishly hidden at times. As sometimes they'll be well hidden within the levels, while others has you really doing a very challenging jump. What was once was probably one of the easiest levels in this game, is one of the longest ones I played in this game because of the star coins. It's all pretty good, with my only critique with some of the star coins is that they're locked behind certain power-ups. Alright, these things. So in New Super Mario Bros., there are about 4 different power-ups, when returning while 3 of them are new. The first one is the usual iconic Fire Flower mushroom, while the funniest thing is that since this was literally one of my first ever Mario games to play, I ended up collecting the Fire Flower, but never actually realized it actually does something because I never really hold down the run button. So 5-year-old me was basically playing through the game like this. Yeah, laugh at me. But as for the next one, this was the one that Nintendo really marketed this game with, is the Mega Mushroom. This is basically a much more souped up version of the regular Super Mushroom where it just makes Mario grow, but with this one, it makes him grow gigantic, as he literally tears everything in his path, even the goal pole, which honestly is just very funny to me. I know some people may have the argument that this makes some of the levels a bit too easy, but honestly, I don't really care. It's just simply fun to use them, especially with some of these areas. But as for the next one, we have the blue shell, and honestly, out of all the Mario power-ups out there, this is the one I always considered very underrated. Well, it's because I just really love how Mario just rolls into the shell like this, as he constantly ricochets off walls, which was always very fun to me. And then finally, we have the Mini Mushroom. Now with the Mega Mushroom, it makes Mario gigantic, so the opposite of that is that this makes Mario very tiny. Now the only actual practical use I can think of is that you're able to go through much more narrower areas, as well as being able to jump higher and also run on water. However, you do die in one hit, and also actually trying to kill an enemy is much more challenging because you have to ground pound them. Although it does give you a decently good challenge, especially when you're going up against the bosses, where 2 of them you actually have to use the Mini Mushroom to defeat them to unlock 2 different worlds. As even though that there's 8 different worlds in this game, you're actually going through 6, while 2 of them are optional. But focusing on the bosses for a minute, this is one of the much more praised aspects of this game in particular, because most of the bosses in this game are completely unique from one another. Now granted, they're mostly exclusive to the castle areas because there's also the tower sections where you're mostly facing off as Bowser Jr., which... Now, I know you're asking, does Bowser Jr. get harder within the game? Well... yeah, he's stupidly easy. But luckily, the main bosses of the game really pick up the slack, as not only they have very unique designs, but how you actually try to defeat them is very different from one another. And the coolest thing too is that they're mostly modified versions of recurrent enemies, like in World 2 for example, it's a much more monstrous version of a Pokey. Since the main focus of this game was the Mega Mushroom, you're actually fighting a Mega Goomba in this game, and hey, why not just throw a Monty Mole in a tank? But ironically, the most memorable boss in this game is easily with World 1, which I've gotta say, it has probably one of the wildest moments ever seen in a Mario game. New Super Mario Bros. Was the first game to try and homogenize the Mario series. Well, with World 1's boss fight, you're actually going up against Bowser on the same bridge as you did in the original Super Mario Bros., but with a much more messed up twist in the end. As the boss fights basically go as this, as Mario need to go behind Bowser and press a switch to knock him into the lava. But in New Super, Bowser actually gets burned alive and turned into a skeleton right before your eyes. This game marked the debut of Dry Bowser, the Dry Bones version of Bowser. And I'm just amazed that they debuted this version in such a hilariously horrific way. Like, the fact that this was in New Super Mario Bros. Is insane. And then later on in the game in World 8, you actually have to fight Dry Bowser, where it basically acts the same as World 1. But this time you actually drop Bowser in a bottomless pit as he crashes and explodes into different pieces. And then the final boss. Well, at this point, Bowser is basically dead. Like, if that lava didn't kill him, then that bottomless pitfall did. As Bowser Jr. then resurrects Bowser by throwing him in a cauldron as he turned gigantic. So yeah, even though the bosses were really never really the high point of 2D Mario, I can safely say that New Soup easily had one of the much more better bosses in the series. And as for the presentation, for a Nintendo DS title, this game looks pretty stellar. You can kind of tell if some of the aspects was reused from Super Mario 64 DS, but for the rest, it looks pretty good. It leans more towards like that 2.5D aesthetic where Mario's in full 3D while everything else is in 2D, and I know that sounds like everything would just clash in. I feel like the art direction here meshes really well, especially with the DS's low-res screen. Plus, even though that this was the very first ever New Super Mario Bros. Games, the art style in this game in particular feels much more different compared to the other New Soup games, where they use a lot of aspects from Wii. But with this, even though this does have some of the aspects of the regular New Soup games, it does have a lot of aspects from the GameCube era of Mario. So in a way, I guess I can call the presentation here transitional between the old and new. And also for the music, it is also very stellar. It's your kind of like basic typical like 2D Mario music. I know people aren't really too big on the music in this game because of the overusage of bars, but honestly I don't really mind too much. As there's something very charming about the music in this game, especially with all the enemies doing the dance when they do the aforementioned bars. Oh, and I really love the castle music in this game, as they really nail the sinister atmosphere here. And finally, to wrap things up, I feel like it's very appropriate to talk about the multiplayer aspects of this game. As New Super Mario Bros. Have multiple kinds of game modes. The first of which is a bunch of minigames that were ported over from Mario 64 DS. And this marks quite literally the only ever appearance of Wario in these New Soup games. But yeah, as for the minigames themselves, they're all pretty solid. A lot of them are those kinds of like basic arcadey endless kind of games, where you basically play them forever until you eventually screw up. Although funniest thing is that some of these could fit very well in like a WarioWare type game. And Poker Night with Luigi will always be so iconic. Just look at that man in that snazzy tuxedo. And then finally we have Mario vs. Luigi. This is basically a 1v1 game, as two players go up against each other in this small arena as they try to collect as many stars as you can. And I'll be honest, this was a really cool multiplayer game, as you constantly knock each other around trying to get as much stars as you can, and collecting a lot of coins will give you a free nifty power-up. It's kind of a shame that not a lot of people can play this mode these days, but for what it is at the time, it was a very fun multiplayer. Alrighty, so that was New Super Mario Bros. And final verdict? Still pretty good. I really adore New Super Mario Bros. Even to this very day. I know this is a series that's not really too fond of for some people, but for me personally when I was little, it was a very satisfying experience. As this game showed me most of the big elements when it comes to 2D Mario, and for that, I am very grateful that this game existed. And even still, without nostalgia in that post-Mario Wonder era, I still think this is one of the better 2D Mario games out there. And if you never played this game before, I highly recommend trying it out. It is still worth your time. As for the other New Super Mario Bros. Games, I'll probably go over them later this year. But as for the next video, we're heading straight back to the Donkey Kong series with Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest. But that'll do it for today, so thank you for watching and I'll see you later. Bye bye!